I want you to try something for a second. If you are in a place where you can safely do so, just, close your eyes.
Yeah, obviously, please do not do this if you are driving.
Right. Keep your eyes on the road if you're behind the wheel. But otherwise, I want to invite you into what we call the theater of the mind.
I love that phrase, the theater of the mind.
It's so fitting, right?
Yeah.
So ask yourself a deeply uncomfortable question. What is the one thing that truly, honestly terrifies you?
And we don't mean like a mild discomfort.
Exactly. Not some phobia you casually joke about at dinner parties to seem quirky,
Right, like being afraid of spiders or something.
Yeah. I am talking about the kind of absolute paralyzing terror that just makes your blood run cold.
The kind that totally strips away your rationality in a fraction of a second.
Yes. Now, I want you to imagine someone you are supposed to trust, someone you share a home with, right?
Like a partner.
Exactly. Imagine they discover that exact crippling fear. And instead of protecting you from it, as a partner should, they decide to weaponize it.
Oh, wow.
Right. They use it as an instrument to push you to your absolute breaking point.
Yeah.
So the question is, how far would you go if you were forced into that corner?
That is a dark scenario. I mean, would you simply break? Or would you become something else entirely?
And that terrifying psychological trap, that is the exact mission of today's deep dive. We are broadcasting to you from Chesterton Radio right here in Atchison, Kansas.
The haunted capital of Kansas, which feels very appropriate for today.
It really does.
Oh.
So today we are bringing you a thorough, really granular exploration of a fascinating piece of audio history. We've pulled together archival scripts, original broadcast tapes, production notes.
Interviews with the creators, too.
Yeah, all of it. To examine a specific broadcast from the CBS Radio Mystery Theater.
And the story's titled The Lost Dog.
Right. It originally aired on January 9, 1974. And it was actually only the fourth broadcast of what would become this, monumental series.
It really was a massive undertaking.
Totally. And our goal today is to unpack how this 45-minute audio drama completely transcends the standard Mystery of the Week formula,
Yeah, because it's not really a traditional mystery at all.
No, it functions as a deeply disturbing, incredibly layered psychological thriller. I mean, it forces us to confront the mechanics of fear, the harrowing reality of domestic abuse.
Which was very much behind closed doors back then.
Right. And it explores the incredibly dark, sometimes twisted bond that exists between humans and animals.
To really understand the impact of The Lost Dog, we have to look at the environment in which it was created.
The context is wild.
It is, because the contrast between the psychological depth of this specific story and the reality of how it was physically produced is just staggering.
Staggering is a good word for it.
So the CBS Radio Mystery Theater was the brainchild of a legendary producer and director named Himan Brown.
A total giant of the industry.
Right. He was a veteran of the golden age of radio. He produced shows like Inner Sanctum Mysteries back in the 1940s. But by the early 1970s, television had completely dominated American living rooms.
Oh, yeah. Radio drama was basically considered a dead art form.
Exactly. But Brown convinced CBS to let him revive it, and his ambition was just monumental.
Monumental is almost an understatement.
I mean, get this. Between January 1974 and December 1982, he produced 1,399 original audio dramas.
Wait. I just need to stop you there. Almost 1,400 original plays.
Yep.
How is that even physically possible? That is literally an assembly line.
It was the absolute definition of an assembly line, and the production schedule was famously grueling. So actors would arrive at the CBS studio building in New York.
Studio G, to be precise, right?
Studio G, exactly. They'd show up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they would do a cold first reading of the script around a table.
Just a cold read.
A cold read. Roles would be assigned right then and there, and then they would immediately move to the microphones and start recording.
That's insane.
And by noon, just 3 hours later, the recording was completely finished.
You've got to be kidding me.
I'm not. The sound effects were done, the dialogue was tracked, and Himan Brown was handing everyone their checks.
I am having a really hard time wrapping my head around that.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me they cast the show, rehearsed it, blocked the microphone positions, executed live Foley sound effects, and recorded the entire 45-minute narrative in under 3 hours.
Yep. 3 hours flat.
How did that not sound like a complete amateur hour mess?
Well, it worked because of the specific talent pool Brown was drawing from, right? And just the inherent mechanics of audio drama.
Meaning you don't need all the visual prep.
Exactly. You don't have to spend hours setting up lighting rigs or camera angles. You don't have to wait for hair and makeup.
Oh, that makes sense.
Furthermore, actors do not have to memorize their lines. They are literally holding the scripts in their hands.
That's a huge time saver.
Huge. And this allowed Brown to cast phenomenal, high-caliber stage and screen actors who, they might not have had weeks to commit to a film shoot, but they could easily spare a single morning in New York.
Right. And we are talking about legendary performers here.
Absolute legends. In The Lost Dog alone, the cast features Kim Hunter,
who famously won an Academy Award for playing Stella in a streetcar named Desire.
Right. Alongside a very young Mandy Patinkin, long before his massive Broadway and television fame.
I still can't get over the compensation aspect of this, too.
Oh, the pay rate.
Yeah. According to the production logs, because they were paying FTRA the union scale in 1974, an actor walked away with about $73.92 per broadcast.
$73.
Adjusted for inflation, that's still only a few $100s today. And the writers got a flat rate of $350 for a script.
Wow.
So why would an Oscar-winning actress like Kim Hunter show up at 9 in the morning for $73?
Honestly, for the sheer love of the medium and the freedom it afforded them. Yeah, because radio acting is incredibly pure. You are stripped of your physical appearance, your costume, your physical mannerism.
Right, it's all voice.
Your entire performance, your entire ability to convey complex emotion rests solely in your vocal cords.
That has to be an intense acting challenge.
It is. And many stage actors considered him and Brown's studio a playground. It was a place to stretch their acting muscles without the massive pressures of a Broadway run or a big Hollywood feature.
So they could play characters entirely outside their physical type.
Exactly. They could be whoever they wanted to be.
So the core contradiction of this deep dive is that such a fast, almost chaotic, factory-like production process yielded this specific, incredibly tight script.
Yeah, it's amazing it turned out so well.
And it was written by Henry Slesar. He was just a master of the twist ending and psychological suspense.
He really was.
He had a massive background in daytime soap operas like The Edge of Night, but he was also one of Alfred Hitchcock's favorite writers.
That makes perfect sense when you listen to this.
Totally. He wrote dozens of episodes for Alfred Hitchcock Presents. And you can really feel that Hitchcockian influence in The Lost Dog.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it relies entirely on dialogue, pacing, and human psychology, rather than elaborate action sequences.
And the constraints of that 3-hour production window might have actually fueled the raw, visceral energy of the performances.
Oh, that's a great point. Like pressure makes diamonds.
Exactly. When actors do not have the luxury of endless takes or months of rehearsal, they cannot overthink their choices.
They just have to go for it.
They have to operate on pure instinct. Slesar's script is perfectly engineered for rapid-fire execution. It's intimate. It's contained.
It really traps the listener in a very small space with very dangerous emotions.
And we cross the threshold into that small, dangerous space entirely through sound. Let's look at how this show built its atmosphere, how it brought the listener into its world.
Yes, because audio drama operates on a fundamentally different frequency than television or film.
Right, because you can't see anything.
Exactly. Because you, the listener, cannot see the threat.
Yeah.
Your brain is actively recruited to help build the set. Your mind is forced to fill in the blanks.
And the human imagination is always going to conjure something far more terrifying than a prop department with a limited budget ever could.
So true. A rubber monster on TV is funny. A monster in your head is terrifying.
Exactly. And the packaging of the show was vital to establishing that frequency. Hyman Brown knew that to hook a modern 1970s audience, he needed a guide.
A host who could set the tone immediately.
Right. And he chose the iconic actor E.G. Marshall, who hosted the show from 1974 until 1982.
See, old-time radio had plenty of spooky hosts. You had the mysterious traveler, you had the whistler.
The crypt keeper in the comics.
Yeah. And they were usually portrayed as these omniscient, supernatural entities, often with these really campy, exaggerated voices.
Like a lot of evil cackling.
Tons of cackling. But E.G. Marshall was something else entirely.
Marshall was fully mortal. He was not a ghost, a ghoul, or a monster. He was portrayed as a highly erudite, incredibly insightful human being who just happened to possess a deep, almost clinical fascination with the macabre.
He was basically the calm, professorial voice of reason, inviting you to step into the madness.
Exactly. His delivery was deadpan, grounded, and intensely serious.
I mean, just the way he says, "Come in, welcome, I'm E.G. Marshall." That delivery is legendary.
It gives you chills.
And then at the end of the hour, he signs off with, "Until next time, pleasant dreams."
He puts that perfect, slightly sinister inflection on the word dreams.
He turns a polite farewell into a subtle threat. It's brilliant.
But before he even speaks a single word, there is the sound.
Oh, the signature, unforgettable sound of the creaking door.
Yes. Hyman Brown actually brought that specific sound effect over from his previous show, Inner Sanctum Mysteries.
It's so iconic. It opens the broadcast, and it slowly swings shut to close it.
And the music accompanying that door is equally important.
Oh, the music is so eerie.
Well, CBS was incredibly clever about reusing its audio assets to save money. The eerie theme music for the Mystery Theater features descending double bass notes.
Right, and a haunting, melancholy bass clarinet.
Yes. And that piece of music is actually excerpted from the orchestral score of a classic Twilight Zone episode called 2.
No way. Really?
Yeah, it was composed by Nathan Van Cleve. And because CBS owned the rights to the entire Twilight Zone music library, they just repurposed it.
That is so smart. And hearing that music instantly signals to the listener's subconscious that they are entering a space where the normal rules of reality and morality are about to be suspended.
It totally sets the mood.
I want to float an analogy about that creaking door, though, because I think it drastically reframes how we listen to the opening.
Okay, let's hear it.
So when you hear a heavy, creaking wooden door in a traditional horror setting, your mind immediately visualizes a haunted house, right? Or a medieval castle, or a Gothic crypt.
Sure, you expect vampires or ghosts.
Exactly. But in the context of the CBS Radio Mystery Theater, and specifically in a really grounded story like The Lost Dog, that door does not represent a physical structure.
What do you think it represents?
I think the creaking door represents the human mind.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The true horror of this series wasn't the supernatural elements they occasionally dabbled in. The true horror was opening the door to the dark, repressed, dusty corners of the human psyche.
That framing completely aligns with E.G. Marshall's introduction to this specific story.
How so?
Because he doesn't set up a monster movie. He explicitly warns the listener right out of the gate. He says, yes, a dog story, but please don't expect a charming family tale about man's best friend. In fact, you may even decide that the dog in this story is man's worst enemy.
Man's worst enemy.
Right. He deliberately subverts the comfortable, familiar cultural trope of the loyal family dog, the Lassie or Rin Tin Tin archetype.
Yeah, the wholesome pet.
He is telling the listener to basically abandon their preconceived sentimental notions at the threshold of that creaking door.
So we are primed for something dark. But when the creaking door swings open and we step into the first scene, we don't find ourselves in a foggy cemetery.
No, we don't.
We find ourselves somewhere far more unsettling because it is so common. We find ourselves in a completely mundane, grounded suburban living room.
It's just the facade of a domestic drama.
Exactly. And this is where Henry Slesar's script begins to show its brilliance. We are introduced to the Smallet household on a seemingly quiet evening.
Let's lay out the primary players in this space just to get oriented.
Okay, so we have Julia Smallet, played by Kim Hunter.
Right. And she is a piano teacher. Her voice is fragile, nervous, and constantly on edge.
You can just hear the anxiety radiating off of her.
Absolutely. And she is currently giving a piano lesson to a 20-year-old student named Ronnie Hughes, played by Mandy Patinkin.
Ronnie is so eager and youthful, and he is clearly harboring a massive boyish crush on his older teacher.
Oh, without a doubt. And then, physically absent from the scene but looming heavily over the entire atmosphere, is George Smallet, Julia's husband. Yeah, George. He runs a local trucking company.
The auditory contrast between the spooky Gothic introduction and this opening scene is intentionally jarring.
It really is.
We hear the halting, plinking sounds of a young man practicing piano scales. It feels incredibly safe, almost aggressively normal.
But the illusion of safety shatters in a matter of seconds.
Right, because Ronnie stops playing. He notices that Julia's cheek is badly swollen.
And Julia immediately tries to wash it off, utilizing the classic tragic excuse of an abused spouse. She claims she was clumsy, that she stumbled against a door.
But Ronnie refuses to accept the lie. He looks at her and says, "I know that your husband hit you, Mrs. Smallet."
And Julia's reaction to this accusation is highly revealing.
It really is, because she doesn't break down in tears of relief that someone noticed. She goes immediately on the defensive.
She attacks Ronnie, actually. She tells him he's listening to foolish town gossip.
Right, and when Ronnie continues to push, she actually begins to defend George.
Yeah, she explains that George is in a difficult, high-stress occupation, that the trucking business is fiercely competitive, and the men he deals with aren't gentle.
She is actively rationalizing his violence.
Yeah.
She's taking the blame upon herself to protect her abuser.
It's incredibly sad to listen to. And finally, she reveals the mundane catalyst for the physical assault.
Over a dog.
Yes. George struck her in the face over a heated argument about getting a dog.
We have to pause here and examine the portrayal of domestic abuse in a national broadcast from 1974.
It's important context.
Because this was unusually bold, confrontational programming for the era.
Very much so. In the early 1970s, domestic violence was still overwhelmingly treated by society and often by law enforcement as a private, behind-closed-doors marital dispute.
Right, like, mind your own business. It's between a husband and wife.
Exactly. The concept of criminalizing marital abuse was still in its infancy in many jurisdictions.
So to have a widely syndicated radio drama feature a husband who not only brutalizes his wife, but openly, arrogantly justifies it, that really strips away the polite fiction of the suburban American dream.
It forces the listener to confront it directly, and George's motivation is central to the horror of the story.
When we finally hear George speak, it becomes clear that he doesn't just suffer from anger management issues or work-related stress.
Not at all.
He has a deep-seated pathological need for total domination.
He views his new suburban house, his wife, and the hypothetical dog he desperately wants, not as companions to share his life with, but as possessions.
They are physical status symbols to him.
Exactly. He must exert absolute control over these objects to validate his own fragile sense of masculinity.
When George arrives home, the dialogue provides just a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
It's chilling.
He complains bitterly about his business, he complains about his dinner being late, and then he does something truly grotesque.
He openly mocks the very injury he inflicted on Julia.
He looks at her swollen cheek and says, "You want to remind me how much you suffer? Well, I got a hot flash for you, kid. The one who suffers around this house is me."
It is textbook gaslighting and narcissistic deflection. He weaponizes his own violence, twisting the narrative so that her physical pain becomes proof of his emotional victimhood.
It's infuriating to listen to. So George is obviously the primary villain, the overt monster of the piece. But I want to scrutinize the character of Ronnie, the piano student, for a second.
Okay, let's talk about Ronnie.
Because Ronnie presents himself in this early scene as Julia's savior.
He does. He tells her he hates the idea of anyone hurting her. He threatens to call the police on George.
Right, he acts like the noble, chivalrous knight riding in to rescue the damsel. But frankly, Ronnie's intentions seem entirely selfish to me.
Really? You view Ronnie's concern for Julia as disingenuous.
I do. I think his concern is rooted entirely in male entitlement rather than genuine empathy.
That's an interesting take. Walk me through that.
Well, think about it. He is a 20-year-old kid. He has an infatuation with his older, vulnerable piano teacher.
True.
He wants to play the hero because it feeds his own adolescent ego. He isn't actually listening to Julia's stated needs, nor is he respecting her boundaries when she asks him to drop the subject.
He does keep pushing when she says to stop.
Exactly. He is projecting a romantic, rescuing fantasy onto her severe trauma. He even becomes visibly frustrated when she continues to treat him like a piano student instead of acknowledging him as a man.
I see what you mean.
He desires her gratitude and likely her romantic affection as a transactional reward for saving her. We see this exact dynamic play out all the time. The nice guy who views a woman's vulnerability as an opening for his own advancement.
That is a highly perceptive reading of the underlying gender dynamics in Slesar's script.
Right, and my reading of Ronnie is completely validated later in the narrative when he effortlessly abandons Julia the exact second his parents buy him a new sports car and he finds a girlfriend his own age.
He drops her so fast.
His devotion was entirely superficial, a role he was playing until a better distraction came along.
Ronnie views Julia's abuse not as an urgent human tragedy to be mitigated, but as an opportunity for himself to feel powerful.
Yes.
He is simply another man attempting to control her narrative, albeit in a softer, seemingly more benevolent manner than George.
Exactly.
Ronnie desires to be the white knight, but he abandons the quest the moment the novelty wears off. This leaves Julia completely isolated, surrounded only by men who view her strictly through the lens of their own immediate needs.
George needs a punching bag to absorb his stress, and Ronnie needs a damsel in distress to bolster his ego.
Spot on. With that grim, suffocating reality established, the plot really accelerates.
Because George realizes that physical violence isn't achieving his ultimate goal. Striking Julia didn't make her agree to get a dog, it just made her cry.
So he decides to escalate his tactics.
He decides to bypass physical pain and weaponize Julia's deepest, most irrational psychological fear.
He brings a dog into the house.
Now, Julia suffers from an absolute paralyzing xenophobia, a severe fear of all dogs.
And she attempts to explain the depth of this terror to George.
She tells him that she goes to pieces when even a tiny, harmless, homeless puppy comes near her on the street. It is not a dislike. It is an uncontrollable, visceral panic reaction.
And George is fully aware of this.
Completely aware.
But instead of showing a shred of spousal empathy or curiosity about where this fear originates, he utilizes it as a tool of warfare.
He doesn't just get a golden retriever puppy either.
No, of course not.
He goes out and acquires a 6-month-old Doberman pinscher named Attila.
Attila, I mean, the name alone.
Right, and to maximize the psychological damage, he doesn't ease her into the introduction. He doesn't bring the dog into the yard and let her watch it through a window.
He smuggles the Doberman into the house, walks into their bedroom while Julia is resting, and literally throws the animal onto their bed.
It is an act of pure, calculated, sadistic cruelty. And George flippantly refers to it as a little direct action.
We must analyze the specific symbolism of the Doberman pinscher in this context. Why did Slesar write a Doberman into the script? Why name it Attila?
It's very deliberate.
Highly deliberate. Historically, Dobermans were bred in the late 19th century specifically for personal protection and intimidation.
They're imposing animals.
Right. So to George, this specific breed represents raw, unapologetic masculine power. George explicitly states that a man needs a pal, someone who truly understands him.
The heavy implication being that Julia fails to fulfill her wifely role because she refuses to eagerly participate in his aggressive, heavy-drinking, domineering lifestyle.
Yes. The Doberman is an extension of George's own inflated, aggressive ego. But to Julia, the dog is the manifestation of pure terror.
It is the physical, breathing embodiment of the threat of violence that already permeates every corner of her home.
And because of George's direct action, Julia suffers a total collapse. She literally cannot inhabit the same physical space as the animal.
She is forced to seek professional medical help. She begins attending sessions with a local hypnotherapist named Dr. Frolic.
Meanwhile, because she cannot be in the house with Attila, she is forced to board the dog at a local kennel.
And a kennel costs $40 a week. Furthermore, Dr. Frolic's therapy sessions cost $50 an hour.
We have to contextualize those numbers for a second.
Oh, yeah, please do.
In 1974, $50 a session was a massive financial expenditure.
Especially for a single-income household where George controls all the finances.
Right. And this economic reality absolutely enrages George.
It creates a fascinating secondary layer of economic tension and financial abuse.
Totally. George forced the entire situation by unilaterally purchasing the dog against his wife's terrified pleas. Yet he bitterly resents the financial consequences of his own actions.
It makes no sense.
He demands instant magical results from the therapist because he is tired of paying the bills.
And this boiling frustration over money and control leads to one of the most disturbing auditory scenes in the entire broadcast.
Which occurs when Ronnie shows up at the house to confront George man to man.
Oh, the infamous love tap scene.
Yeah, this is hard to listen to.
This is where George's primitive need for dominance is laid completely bare. So Ronnie shows up at the Smallet house, puffed up with adolescent bravado.
He tells George that if he ever lays a hand on Julia again, Ronnie will personally go to the police.
Right, he attempts to threaten George with the authority of the law.
And George's reaction is terrifying precisely because it is so calm.
So calm.
He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't yell or scream at the boy. He simply asks Ronnie if he knows the difference between a real hit and a love tap.
And then, casually, right in front of Ronnie, George strikes Julia across the face.
As she cries out, George turns back to Ronnie and says, "Now that's a love tap, Ronnie, baby.
Yeah.
You better be sure you know the difference before you talk to the cops."
It is sickening. He deliberately uses physical violence against his own wife simply to establish alpha male dominance over a 20-year-old kid in his own living room.
He is marking his territory, proving that he owns the space and everything in it, and that Ronnie is powerless to intervene.
And the horrifying truth is, it works perfectly. Ronnie is completely neutralized.
He is shocked into silence and quickly retreats.
Observing this pattern of behavior brings me to a point of theoretical speculation regarding George's true motives.
Oh, what are you thinking?
Well, if we look closely at how George operates, I have to ask, does George actually care about having a dog at all?
I'm not sure I follow. He spends the whole first act screaming about how much he wants a dog. What do you mean?
Well, listen to the sequence of his actions. He brings a notoriously aggressive breed into the house, fully knowing the psychological devastation it will cause his wife.
Right.
He then uses the resulting financial strain of the kennel and the therapist as fresh ammunition to berate her daily. He uses the existence of the situation to humiliate her potential ally, Ronnie.
That's true.
I would argue that George intuitively brought that Doberman into the house specifically to break Julia's spirit. The dog is merely an instrument of torture.
Wow.
George's ultimate goal is her complete, unquestioning subjugation. He wants her so broken, so isolated, so financially dependent, and so terrified of her own environment that she will never have the psychological capacity to leave him or defy him ever again.
That is wow.
The dog is just a means to that end.
Though he doesn't want a pet to throw a ball with, he wants a warden for his own personal domestic prison.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly dark interpretation, but it makes perfect, chilling sense given his actions.
Doesn't it?
However, George's arrogance and his impatience end up being his own undoing. He is furious about those $50 therapy bills, and he essentially marches into Dr. Frolick's office and demands that the therapist fast-track the curing process.
And that intense pressure from George inadvertently provides Julia with the exact key she needs to unlock her own hidden power.
The narrative shifts now to the medical intervention. Dr. Frolick, clearly feeling the intense pressure from the belligerent husband footing the expensive bills, decides to bypass traditional talk therapy.
Because George wants results now.
Right, so Frolick utilizes an extreme, fast-acting, and highly controversial technique known as hyperamnesia, which is more commonly understood as age regression hypnotherapy.
Wait, I need a little clarity on this, because the script treats it almost like a magic trick. How was this age regression therapy actually viewed in the 1970s? Was this standard medical practice or fringe pseudoscience?
Well, it was a very real, though highly debated psychological practice that gained significant traction in the 1970s and 1980s, eventually leading to the highly controversial recovered memory movement.
All right, the recovered memory stuff.
The underlying theory, which draws heavily from early Freudian psychoanalysis, is that severe phobias or neuroses are the result of repressed childhood traumas.
So the conscious mind buries the memory to protect the individual, but the emotional distress leaks out as an irrational phobia.
Exactly. Dr. Frolick's goal is to place Julia in a deep hypnotic state, bypass her conscious defenses, and walk her backward through her own timeline to locate the exact moment the trauma occurred.
The belief was that once the patient consciously remembered and confronted the original trauma, the phobia would instantly evaporate.
Correct.
So Dr. Frolick places Julia in a deep trance, and we, the listener, get to ride along on this auditory journey as he regresses her backward through time.
It's a great sequence.
He takes her to 7 years old, 6 years old, 5 years old.
Oh.
Well, actually, at those ages, she reports having absolutely no fear of dogs. She likes them.
Right.
But then he brings her forward and stops at 8 years old. And the buried trauma violently explodes to the surface.
Kim Hunter's vocal performance in this sequence is nothing short of remarkable.
She is incredible here.
She strips the adult refinement from her voice and adopts the frantic, breathless, devastated cadence of an 8-year-old child experiencing absolute panic.
Under hypnosis, she remembers her childhood dog, a mixed breed named Topper.
Topper.
And she remembers a neighborhood bully, a 10-year-old boy named Bobby.
Bob sounds like an absolute nightmare.
He was the classic childhood tormentor. Under hypnosis, Julia recounts how he constantly teased her, pulled her hair, deliberately tore her dress, and shoved mud into her shoes.
Awful.
But the ultimate breaking point occurred when Bobby picked up a heavy rock and hurled it at her dog.
The rock hit Topper.
And in that singular moment of pure, unadulterated childhood rage, 8-year-old Julia didn't just cry and run away.
No, she didn't.
She turned to her dog, pointed at the bully, and commanded the animal to attack. She screamed, "Kill him! Kill him! Kill him!"
And the dog obeyed her command. Topper leaped at Bobby and bit him savagely in the neck.
Oh my God.
The boy survived the attack, but as a direct result of the incident, Topper was seized by the authorities and put down. He was euthanized.
That is just heartbreaking.
This revelation provides the brilliant, paradigm-shifting psychological twist of Henry Slesar's narrative. Julia's lifelong paralyzing cynophobia is not actually a fear of being attacked by an animal.
Right. It is a manifestation of profound, suffocating, repressed guilt.
She isn't afraid of dogs because she thinks they are violent. She is terrified of dogs because they serve as a constant breathing reminder of her own latent capacity for violence.
Yes. She carries the immense psychological trauma of having used an animal as a weapon to destroy a bully, an act that directly resulted in the execution of the very pet she loved.
Exactly.
Her paralyzing fear isn't cowardice. Her fear is a massive subconscious mental block explicitly designed to keep her own immense lethal rage securely in check.
Which exposes the tragic, fatal irony of Dr. Frolick's medical diagnosis.
Yeah.
It is a monumental psychological oversight.
Oh, he completely misreads the situation.
Completely. He slowly brings Julia out of the hypnotic trance, sounding incredibly pleased with his own work. He tells her she has finally found the lost dog, this tragedy of past innocence.
He confidently assures her that because she was merely an 8-year-old child when it happened, it wasn't truly her fault.
The dog acted on its own instincts, he reasons. He assumes that now that the guilt has been dragged into the light of her conscious mind and rationalized away, she is completely cured.
He assumes she will go home, pet the Doberman, and be able to accept a dog's love again.
He misses the danger entirely. It is a catastrophic miscalculation.
By absolving her of the guilt, by explicitly telling her that the violent outcome wasn't her fault, he is dismantling the only mental barrier that was keeping her homicidal impulses suppressed.
He thinks he is gently removing a phobia, but what he is actually doing is removing the safety catch on a loaded weapon.
Exactly. And this monumental psychological shift leads directly into the story's climax. With the mental block completely removed, the internal pressure valve is gone.
Julia is no longer the fragile, terrified, easily manipulated victim we met in scene 1.
So we move into the final chilling sequence. The stage is set perfectly for disaster.
Ronnie drops by the house one last time, and as we discussed earlier, his true colors are fully revealed.
Oh, he is just awful here.
He pulls up, driving a brand new sports car purchased by his parents. He is bragging about his new girlfriend, Lisa.
And when Julia politely asks if he wants to come inside for a cup of tea, he refuses.
He practically sprints away from the house to get back to his own carefree life.
So Julia is left standing on the porch. She is completely, utterly abandoned. She is totally isolated. No one is coming to save her.
She walks back inside her house, but the internal dynamic has fundamentally shifted. George is not home yet.
Instead of fleeing from Attila the Doberman, instead of locking herself in a separate room in a panic, she approaches the animal.
She unties the dog, and she speaks to it. But she doesn't speak with fear, and she doesn't speak with affection.
She speaks with a calm, horrifying, icy purpose.
She retrieves George's unwashed jacket, which he had explicitly told her to take to the dry cleaners earlier that day.
She knows George's unique scent. The sweat, the smoke, the cologne is all over that fabric.
And she begins to actively train the Doberman.
The radio transcript gives us her exact, chilling words. She says, "See the jacket, Attila. Smell a jacket, boy. Go on, smell it. Now stick the jacket."
It is heavily implied through the tone and the audio cues that she is training the dog to violently attack that specific scent.
She is programming the animal to attack the source of the scent the moment it walks through the front door.
She's programming the dog to kill George.
And the broadcast ends right there on that terrifying cliffhanger.
E.G. Marshall returns to the microphone to close the show with a deeply cynical philosophical observation.
He notes that while a dog is famously known as man's best friend, there's absolutely no reason a dog cannot be woman's best friend, especially when that woman is finally learning just how helpful a dog can be.
He promises the listener, with that signature grim satisfaction, that George Smallet is going to come home to a very surprising greeting.
The narrative effectiveness of this ending lies in its absolute stubborn refusal to provide any sort of clean moral closure.
It does not wrap the story up neatly in a bow.
Right. There is no triumphant scene of the police kicking down the door to arrest George for domestic assault. There is no dramatic courtroom trial where Julia gives a tearful testimony and finds legal justice.
There's just looming, bloody, inevitable vengeance waiting patiently behind the front door.
This brings us to the most crucial, compelling debate regarding the ethics of Slesar's narrative.
How are we, as the audience, supposed to interpret Julia's final act? Is it a triumph or is it a tragedy?
I will take the first swing at this because I think there is a very strong argument to be made that this is a dark but incredibly satisfying narrative of feminine empowerment.
Okay, lay it out.
Look at the reality of her situation. Julia has been systematically victimized, physically beaten, psychologically gaslit, and financially humiliated.
All true.
The 1974 legal system isn't going to intervene to help her. And her supposed allies, like Ronnie, have proven completely useless and abandoned her.
Also true.
She is backed into a lethal corner. So she takes the exact weapon her abuser brought into the house to terrorize her, and she flips the dynamic.
She turns his own instrument of torture against him.
Exactly.
No.
It is the definition of poetic justice.
Mm.
She achieves her own physical liberation through the absolute only avenue left available to her. It is a brutal, necessary survival mechanism.
I hear that perspective, and it certainly appeals to our primal human desire for retribution. We want to see the bully punished.
Right, it feels justified.
But I have to counter that argument.
Okay, let's hear the counter.
If you look at the psychological mechanics at play, the ending is actually deeply unsettling and perhaps even a profound tragedy.
Why a tragedy?
Look at what has fundamentally happened to Julia's psyche. She hasn't just defeated George physically, she has spiritually become George.
No.
She has resorted to his exact methodology, using brute force and an animal proxy to assert absolute dominance and inflict lethal violence.
It's a dark way to look at it, but yeah.
Furthermore, she has reverted entirely to the traumatized logic of her 8-year-old self.
Yeah.
She is once again using a dog to destroy a bully.
History repeating itself.
In doing so, you could argue the true monster of the story isn't George, and it certainly isn't the Doberman.
And what is it?
The true monster is the cycle of abuse itself. The cycle has completely consumed her humanity. She had to destroy her own soul to save her own life.
Wow. I hadn't looked at it from that angle. She didn't break the cycle of violence. She just violently took her turn at the top of the hierarchy.
Exactly.
That is a heavy, heavy thought. And it perfectly illustrates why this specific deep dive into classic audio drama is so vital. It forces us to zoom out from the claustrophobic Smallet household and reflect on what this specific narrative tells us about broader literary themes.
Very much so.
Why do you think stories involving animals, particularly dogs, so effectively reveal these hidden, ugly truths about human nature?
Well, animals in literature and drama almost always act as blank mirrors for the human characters.
Blank mirrors.
Yeah. A dog in particular is deeply attuned to human emotion, scent, and social hierarchy. In this story, the Doberman Attila has no inherent morality. It isn't evil.
Right. It's just a dog.
It is a blank slate driven by instinct and training. George projects his own brutality, his insecurity, and his desperate desire for dominance onto the dog.
And Julia, initially, projects her deep-seated trauma and fear onto it.
But ultimately, once the mental block is removed, she projects her repressed, lethal rage onto the animal. The dog simply reflects the darkest, most primitive aspects of the humans holding the leash.
And radio drama remains the absolute perfect, unparalleled medium for this kind of psychological mirroring.
It really does. By forcing the listener's imagination to do the heavy lifting to visualize Julia standing in that quiet, dimly lit house, holding her abuser's unwashed jacket, whispering commands to this highly dangerous animal.
The horror becomes so much more visceral than if we were passively watching it on a television screen.
Oh, completely. If you show that scene on TV, the viewer's eye is distracted. You are focused on the dog's bared teeth or the set design or whether the fake blood looks realistic.
On the radio, devoid of visual distraction, your brain is focused entirely on the terrifying, intimate implications of the act itself.
You feel the silence of the house. You feel the inevitability of the violence.
Which brings up a very interesting point about modern media consumption compared to the audiences of the 1970s.
Oh, I wonder if modern consumers of media have become far too dependent on explicit explanations and morally clear, unambiguous endings.
Oh, absolutely we have. Today, we expect a post-credit scene to neatly explain every character's motivation.
We expect a tidy epilogue where the villain goes to prison and the hero goes to therapy and learns to heal. We want the moral ledger balance.
And The Lost Dog offers absolutely none of that comfort. It offers stark, uncompromising ambiguity.
And that ambiguity, that deeply uncomfortable space where the victim seamlessly transitions into the perpetrator, is exactly what makes a story lodge in your brain.
Because a standard procedural mystery where a brilliant detective uses clues to solve a murder is usually forgotten by the time you wake up the next day.
The puzzle is solved, the brain moves on.
But a story that leaves you morally compromised, a story that makes you question what you would do if you were trapped in that same house, that kind of story sticks with you for decades.
Because it actively demands that you, the listener, participate in the final moral judgment. The script doesn't tell you how to feel.
You have to decide for yourself if justice was truly served in that living room, or if a terrible human tragedy was simply compounded by more violence.
That brings us right back to where we started our broadcast today.
Yes, it does. When you step through the creaking door and enter the theater of the mind, the landscape is intentionally murky.
It is not a clean clinical X-ray showing a broken bone that can be easily set.
No, it is a complex, shifting shadow play of trauma, memory, and survival. So as we wrap up our time here at Chesterton Radio, I want to leave you with a final, lingering question to ponder long after we sign off.
Put yourself in that hallway. Think about the exact moment the front door finally opens and George Smollett steps inside, expecting his dinner.
When the Doberman finally lunges from the shadows, does Julia actually break free from her torment?
Or does that ultimate bloody act of vengeance simply lock her in a psychological cage far worse and far more permanent than the one she was already in?
It is certainly something to think about the next time you hear a creaking door in the dark.
Until next time.
Pleasant dreams.